and then Monday looks like we have some chance of rain, but also temperature in the 60s. All right, I want to go to my Bible Rima this morning. This morning I turned to Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament, and my finger first pointed to verse 7, so I want to read that alone, but then also read the entire chapter. It's not a long chapter because it's an interesting vision that Jeremiah had. Chapter 24, verse 7 in Jeremiah says this, "And I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart." This is actually, the chapter is about a vision that Jeremiah had of 2 baskets of figs. And let me read that to you. "The Lord showed me, and behold, 2 baskets of figs were set before the temple of the Lord. After that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Joachim, the king of Judah, and the princes of Judah, with the carpenters and smiths from Jerusalem, and had brought them to Babylon. 1 basket had very good figs, even like the figs that they are first ripe. And the other basket had very naughty figs, which could not be eaten, they were so bad. Then said the Lord unto me, What seest thou, Jeremiah? And I said, Figs, the good figs very good, and the evil very evil, that cannot be eaten, they are so evil. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, Like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive of Judah, whom I have sent out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans for their good. For I will set mine eyes upon them for good, and I will bring them again to this land, and I will build them, and not pull them down, and I will plant them, and not pluck them up. And I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart. And as the evil figs which cannot be eaten, they are so evil. Surely, thus saith the Lord, so will I give Zedekiah the king of Judah and his princes and the residue of Jerusalem that remain in this land, and them that dwell in the land of Egypt. And I will deliver them to be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt, to be a reproach and a proverb, a taunt and a curse in all places whither I shall drive them. And I will send the sword, the famine, and the pestilence among them, till they be consumed from off the land that I gave unto them and to their fathers." Wow. Really, well, first let me read my Rima from the Cheonseongeong. I'm in, I'm in Book 5 here, Book 5, Chapter 1, page 556. Father says these are words that he spoke in 1986. All of you possess a spirit that we in the Unification Church call the spirit self and a physical self. The spirit self, though invisible to our eyes, does exist. Then when do your spirit self and physical self become one? This is the problem. It is the same with a tuning fork. When you strike one of its prongs, the other prong vibrates at the same frequency. In like manner, when God's love acts upon our mind, our body automatically responds. Ajahn. Thank you, Father. Really, it's a number of points in the vision of Jeremiah struck me this morning. And first of all, the verse that I was led to in the beginning, verse 7, that God gives us a heart to know him. God gives us a heart to know him. I'm reminded that faith itself is a gift of the Spirit, a gift of God. That, of course, we have our portion of responsibility. Everyone has a portion of responsibility. But some people seem to be able to have faith, and some people, no matter how logically they can understand the truth of God's word, they are still not able to have faith. That has been something that has puzzled me, I guess, for many, many years. As I look back on my own course as a child I was a child of a minister, and I read the Bible. I think the first time I read the Bible through was probably when I was sixth or seventh grade, and and I was baptized actually into the Methodist Church when I was 10 years old, when I was in the fourth grade in elementary school. And from that point, I guess, I also when I was a child, as a sixth or seventh grader, I felt some presence. I felt some in my life, and um, felt a certain also gratitude and also a certain responsibility towards that presence. And But I had certain questions certainly that I could not understand. For example, I remember asking my father, I think probably when I was about sixth or seventh grade, why is the God of the Old Testament so different from the God of the New Testament? I don't remember his answer, which probably means that it wasn't very convincing. um, and I certainly later on in school, in various situations that I faced, I felt God's protection and guidance. And as I went to university, of course, universities, as the King has pointed out, are really maybe not so much now, maybe not so much then as now, but really even then were indoctrination centers where. But I think back when I went to university, probably there was not such a overt attack on Christianity as there is today. But it was more insidious, perhaps more subtle. But there certainly was this atmosphere, this general atmosphere of that was secular, very secular and humanistic, certainly. Um, and so during the college years, I would say that my belief in God was not very strong at all. In fact, but I never I never came to the point where I denied God's existence, because I remembered how God had worked in my life earlier, and also I could see that to my parents, God was very real. And I think that influenced me very greatly. Some of my friends were openly atheist. Other friends were openly evangelical. But I was kind of in the middle, I guess. But then after graduating from university, I felt a strong need to get back to church. And so I started looking for a church that I could attend. And I um, went to a few churches before I finally found one, which is where I am now. But it's really, it would seem that, so that I know that different people go different courses, and eventually, of course, everyone receives salvation. And I really believe that in the end, this world will be a world in which there is not even a shadow of sin. And no, that I don't know how long that's going to take. From the normal point of view, we might think that that's going to take thousands of years. I don't know, but God, I'm sure, has a plan for accomplishing that. Because without that, um, God's creation will not be complete. We will not have the original world that God desired. Satan's influence, Satan's sin in the world was not there when this world was first created, and certainly it should not be there. Always, although there is always the possibility of evil, and there will be people who will make poor choices, but that is all part of that is part of God's creation. But not that you have an existence like Satan, who is challenging God and who is trying to overthrow God and trying to become the subject himself. That is certainly not part of God's creation, and I'm certain that will eventually disappear. But here in Jeremiah, you see that God talks about dividing people. he says, some people he will give them a heart to know me. Let's say, and he says, and then others he will remove them from the kingdom, from the earth, for their hurt. That was interesting to me that he says that I have sent them out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans for their good, he says on one hand, whereas in the other he says he will deliver them to the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt. So for one, he will, and I will deliver them to be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt. So on the one hand, he's saying that I will take a certain group of people out of the place where they are now, out of Israel, out of the chosen land, and remove them to another place for their own good, for their good. And other people to scatter them to the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt. So he is dividing two groups of people. People say that, oh, God never divides, but he does divide. Even, this is not just in the Old Testament, even in the 20th century, he divided nations in the First World War and the Second World War, and even now he is dividing nations. That is a point that many people seem to miss, that God, throughout the Bible, and even today, divides. And he works with one group in order to overcome Satan, in order to set the condition for the providence to move forward. And here he says that when the people who are removed for their hurt will be a reproach and a proverb, a taunt and a curse in all places where I shall drive them. This reminds me that in the Chonryugu Constitution, the Chonryugu Constitution is a libertarian, Republican monarchy, and it is based on the free market system, where so that the government interference in daily lives and also government interference in markets is reduced to a very minimum. The government role is to prevent monopolies and to provide transparency so that the free market system can work. So people will fail. And when people fail, and when people, sometimes they fail because of the, actually in free market system, most businesses that are begun will probably fail. I think today I read someplace that something like 85% of businesses that started in the U.S. have failed within the first 5 years or something like that. So also in the free market system, many businesses will fail. But of course, people fail and they can try again until they finally are able to find something. And also people will make poor choices, evil choices. For example, in the Chonryugu Constitution says that the government cannot ban hallucinogenic substances. In other words, things like marijuana and even harder drugs cannot be banned by the government, although they can be regulated. And people will have to make their own choice. Hopefully, everyone will understand that these are bad for you and that they kill you, and they will choose not to use them. But some people will choose. We can expect that some people will choose to use them. And then what will happen to them? Well, they will be, as God said to Jeremiah, a proverb, a lesson to other people. This is what happens when you take these drugs. Or this is what happens when you do that kind of thing. A taunt and a curse. And that is how people build their responsibility and the ability to make good judgments. So hopefully over time, everyone will understand what the proper choice is, what the right choice is, what the consequences are for poor choices. Thank you. I want to now take a break, and we'll be back in a minute or so with headlines from today's news. We'll be looking at the news from a Chonryugu perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
On the upper left side, New York Times says Trump told Russians firing, quote, nut job, unquote, Comey eased pressure. The Washington Post probe reaches current White House official. CNN, Russians believed they could use Flynn for influence. Media war frenzy. Networks, White House leaks aimed at undermining president. Duh. Under attack from his own staff. He looks more and more like complete moron, in quotes. Comey agrees to testify in open hearing before Senate committee. Mueller appointment could violate ethics rules. Confusion. What are they investigating? Meanwhile, Donald of Arabia is the main headline on Drudge because President Trump is in Saudi Arabia today. And I have also his Twitter account open. And it'd be great if he were to tweet during the broadcast today. So far, he has not since leaving for Saudi Arabia. 19 hours ago, he tweeted, getting ready for my big foreign trip. We'll be strongly protecting American interests. That's what I like to do. He has 86,000 likes on that and 18,000 retweets. So I'll be looking at his account from time to time. I don't know if he can tweet from Saudi Arabia. I don't know if Twitter's banned there or if it's allowed there. I don't know. Anyway, or of course, I'm sure that the U.S. president has his own communications apparatus and setup all there in the Air Force One. So I'm sure he could tweet if he wanted to. We'll see if he does.
One would expect so.
Opening first foreign trip, Trump tries to leave crisis behind. Balloons, Sura robots, 10,000 cops to guard president. And then the itinerary. Stampede at Barclays Center after gunshot fears during rap concert. Arizona politician lays out sex exploits in bizarre interview. President orders Pentagon to annihilate the Islamic State. And then three stories related. ICE agents caught staking out church during services. Feds using Stingray to hunt undocumented. Colorado governor pardons felon to stave off deportation. And then there's one called Study. Journalist brains show low level of executive functioning. Wait a second. I was a journalist. Does that mean anyway? VR headsets get stuck in shelves. Officer accused of offering to dismiss tickets in exchange for nude photos. Police say 81-year-old man kills wife, drives self to jail. And Noonan, that would be Peggy Noonan, President Reagan's former speechwriter. Democracy is not your plaything. She's always a good writer. I think I might look at that later on. Jeb, told you so. And MSNBC tops again. MSNBC has been doing pretty well in the cable news area compared to other stations. Man charged after removing transgender woman's testicles. Insta rated worst social for mental health of youth. And then, 4 articles about Assange. Sweden drops Assange rape investigation. Ecuador government asks UK to give safe passage. The war has just begun, quote unquote. Pamela Anderson, Lady Gaga rally to cause. And then FEC boss who tried muzzling Drudge now on Soros' payroll. Sounds about right.
Uh-huh.
Tough new controls for web giants in the UK. Alabama lawmakers approve Confederate monument protection. Iran President Rouhani holds power. Cher craps on own music. Not a fan of Cher. I guess that, I Got You Babe didn't really like that, huh? Suspect steals pants, underwear man was wearing during home invasion. Okay. They could buy, but why? Meet the high renters. Man tries to set diners on fire at Denny's. Carload of teens attack Dunkin' Donuts manager. Plants can hear, use sense to seek flowing water. Wow. Update. Chunky monkey, strict diet after intense capture. And then over here, workers' clothing exposed to radioactive contamination at nuclear site. Military jets escort Honolulu-bound American Airlines flight. Turkish man tried to break into cockpit. Wiener pleads guilty to sexting with minor. Prosecutors want 2 years. Downfall shames mentor Chuck Schumer. Huma files for divorce. AI doctors videos to put words in speakers' mouths. Wow. Pictures never lie? I guess videos do. AI doctors videos to put words on in speakers' mouths. That's frightening. Mother paralyzed after bad batch of gas station nachos. Weekend, dreaming Preakness win. Hollywood's big summer movies all filmed elsewhere. The court strikes down rule forcing toy drone users to register with feds. Raining fish, schoolyard roof covered in carp. 61 living cats, 9 dead ones found in, quote, deplorable, unquote, home. Wow.
Well, there's a lot of good news there.
A lot of good news, yes. But I want to go to this story, actually, that Drudge headlined with confusion of what's being investigated. Mm-hmm. It's actually a story in the Rolling Stone, which I confess I have not, that's a publication I've not turned to in many, many years. Mm-hmm. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I might have, or if ever I looked at the Rolling Stone. I might have some time ago, but it describes, I think, pretty well the confusion that's going on, that all these allegations and leaks and everything, and so people are beginning to wonder, what was this all about? Yeah. So former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper appeared on This Week Sunday and said some head-scratching things. Clapper, back in March, told Meet the Press that when he issued the January 6th multi-agency intelligence community assessment about Russians' interference in the election, the report didn't include evidence of collusion between Trump campaign and Russia, essentially saying he hadn't been aware of any such evidence up through January 20th, his last day in office. Clapper was the Director of National Intelligence under Barack Obama. On Sunday, he said that didn't necessarily mean there was no such evidence, because sometimes he left it up to the agency chiefs like former FBI Director James Comey to inform him about certain things. I left it to the judgment of Director Comey, Clapper said, to decide whether, when, and what to tell me about counterintelligence investigations. Clapper said something similar when he testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee last Monday. In prepared remarks, he essentially said that there was nothing odd about his not being informed about the existence of an FBI counterintelligence investigation involving Donald Trump's campaign. Speaking generally, Clapper seemed to imply that the Trump-Russia collusion scandal, the thing colloquially known as hashtag Russiagate all over the world now, may have originated in information gleaned by the intelligence community, who in turn may have tipped off the FBI. I quote, when the intelligence community obtains information suggesting that a U.S. person is acting on behalf of a foreign power, he said, the standard procedure is to share that information with the lead investigatory body, which of course is the FBI, unquote. He went on, explaining that in such a situation it wouldn't be unusual for the DNI to not be informed about an FBI counterintelligence investigation. Given the sensitivity, he said, even the existence of a counterintelligence investigation is closely held, including at the highest levels. In his Senate testimony, Clapper went out of his way to say he didn't contradict his earlier statements, but if he's not contradicting himself, he's certainly adding a layer of confusion to what is already the most confusing political scandal ever. Back on March 5th, when Clapper gave that interview to Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, he sounded definitive on a number of counts. Todd, for instance, asked Clapper if he would know if the FBI had a FISA court order for surveillance. Clapper answered unequivocally, yes. FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and they have a court that kind of a secret court. It is a secret court, actually, not kind of a secret court. It is a secret court that is able to issue orders that allow the government to do things that, seem kind of unconstitutional. But anyway, that's another story. Clapper made it clear that he would have known if there were any kind of surveillance authority against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign. He would have known. Todd realized this was an important question, and he re-asked it to make sure Clapper heard it right. You would be told this? He asked. And Clapper answered, I would know that. Todd asked again, are you sure? Can you confirm or deny that a FISA warrant exists? I can deny it, Clapper said flatly. So it wasn't until the fourth time Todd asked the question that Clapper finally added the caveat, not to my knowledge. Even so, there was no way to listen to the March 5th interview and not come away feeling that, like Clapper believed, he would have known of the existence of a FISA warrant or of any indications of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia had they existed up until the time he left office on January 20th of this year. Todd went out of his way to hammer at the question of whether or not he knew of any evidence of collusion. Clapper again said, not to my knowledge. Here, Todd appropriately pressed him, if it did exist, would you know? To this, Clapper merely answered, this could have unfolded or become available in the time since I left the government. That's not an unequivocal yes, but it's close. There's no way to compare Clapper's statements on March 5th to his interviews last week and not feel that something significant changed between then and now. Clapper's statements seemed even stranger in light of James Comey's own testimony in the House on March 20th. In that appearance, Comey, who by then had dropped his bombshell about the existence of an investigation into Trump campaign figures, was asked by New York Republican Elise Stefanik when he notified the DNI about his inquiry. Good question, Comey said. That's a response that means I need more time to think about how to answer that question. As a journalist, without executive function, you know that. Obviously, the Department of Justice has been aware of it all along. He said, this is Comey in quotes. The DNI, I don't know what the DNI's knowledge of it was, because we didn't have a DNI until Mr. Coates took office and I briefed him his first morning. Comey was saying that he hadn't briefed the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, because between January 20th, when Clapper left office, and March 16th, when former Indiana Senator and now Trump appointee Dan Coats took office, the DNI position was unfilled. But Comey had said the counterintelligence investigation dated back to July, when he was FBI director under a Democratic president. So what happened between July and January? If Comey felt the existence of his investigation was so important that he had to disclose it to DNI Coats on Coates' first day in office, why didn't he feel the same need to disclose the existence of an investigation to Clapper at any time between July and January? Furthermore, how could the FBI participate in a joint assessment about Russian efforts to meddle in American elections and not tell Clapper and other intelligence chiefs about what would seemingly be a highly germane counterintelligence investigation in that direction? Again, prior to last week, Clapper had said he would know if there was a FISA warrant issued on this matter. But then on April 11th, law enforcement and government officials leaked anonymously, as has been the case throughout most of this story, that the FBI had obtained a FISA warrant for surveillance of Trump associate Carter Page. So what's going on here? In talking to people on the Hill last week, I heard a number of theories. One interpretation is that the FBI, concerned about operational security, conducted a secret investigation during the last months of Barack Obama's presidency without informing the likes of Clapper and other agency chiefs. But why hide your investigation in Obama's administration only to tell superiors about it under Trump? Why keep a secret from Clapper and not Coates? Moreover, why hide it from the voting public before the election, but announce it on live TV on March 20th? Another interpretation is that Clapper was simply not telling the whole truth, either on March 20th or last week. In this version of events, he knew of the FBI investigation all along. More than one person I spoke with found it implausible that Clapper could have been ignorant of any investigation, especially following the issuance of the reported FISA warrant against Page. But the context of these interviews still makes Clapper disassembling in his March interview a strange and unlikely possibility. Clapper has not been in the habit of doing Trump political favors this season. And if indeed it's standard practice for a DNI to not know what counterintelligence operations the FBI might be up to, it would have made a lot of sense for Clapper to say that on Meet the Press on March 5th. Instead, he did Trump a solid by stating unequivocally that there were no FISA warrants out, and that he would have known if there were, adding he had seen no evidence of collusion. Why? When James Comey was fired last week, I didn't know what to think because so much of this story is still hidden from view. If there is a story, actually. Maybe that's the theory that we should be pursuing. Maybe it's all confusing because maybe beyond the fog, there's nothing there. I don't know if Rolling Stone is going to get there, but let's see. Certainly, firing an FBI director who has announced the existence of an investigation targeting your campaign is going to be improper in almost every case. And in his post-firing rants about tapes and loyalty, President Trump validated every criticism of him as an impetuous, unstable, unfit executive who additionally is ignorant of the law and lunges for authoritarian solutions in a crisis, according to Rolling Stone. That's Rolling Stone there. But it's our job in the media to be bothered by little details, and the strange timeline of the Trump-Russia investigation qualifies as a conspicuous loose end. What exactly is the FBI investigating? Why was it kept secret from other intelligence chiefs if that's what happened? That matters if we're trying to gauge what happened last week. Is it a Foreign Agents Registration Act case involving former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn or a lower-level knucklehead like Carter Page? Since FARA, F-A-R-A, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, is violated more or less daily in Washington and largely ignored by authorities unless it involves someone without political connections, an awful lot of important people in Washington who appear to be making fortunes lobbying for foreign countries are merely engaged in litigation support, if you ask them. It would be somewhat anticlimactic to find out that this was the alleged crime underlying our current white-hot constitutional crisis. Is it something more serious than a FARA case, like money laundering, for instance, involving someone higher up in the Trump campaign? That would indeed be disturbing, and it would surely be improper, possibly even impeachable, depending upon what exactly happened behind the scenes for Trump to get in the way of such a case playing itself out. But even a case like that would be very different from espionage and treason. Gutting a money laundering case involving a campaign staffer would be more like garden variety corruption than the cloak and dagger nightmares currently consuming the popular imagination. However, let's say that FBI is actually investigating collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian state. That's the most serious possibility and the one exciting so much public dread. If it's that, what's at the heart of that case? Why can't we be told what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Operational secrecy would be a believable excuse were it not for the fact that so much else has been leaked. Everything else been leaked.
Yeah, they kind of pick what they leak.
Or unless there's nothing there, you see.
Exactly.
See, that's the simplest theory, I think, that we can, there's just, you can't leak it because it ain't there.
They invent things that aren't there and things that are out on the edge in the world of speculation among people. Now, Clapper, who's beginning to speculate and join the fog, enter the fog zone. His comments indicate that they manufacture something out of nothing, or take a little nothing and make something out of it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think that's about enough for this. But anyway, so the Rolling Stone, of course, is a very liberal publication, and this particular reporter was taking a step back and saying, "Wait a second, what's going on here?" That's I think interesting that even some of the liberals now are beginning to pull back. I think.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, well, it's a good sign, but also it's a sign that this could all come back to ricochet or to boomerang on the Democrats. Because and yesterday we had a story about how the Democratic leadership now is telling their people, don't be so eager about calling for the impeachment of President Trump. And then maybe they're getting the feeling that maybe they've looked behind the fog and seen that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in a minute or so. We'll be going through more news from a Choniguk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 20th, 2017. We're in the 4th month and the 25th day of the heavenly calendar and the 8th year of Chungi. And I'm Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Choniguk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Bill Brunhofer this morning. Bill, you had some more things to say about that article that we just read from the Rolling Stone?
Well, you know, on the one hand, he was casting doubt on Clapper's new sense of possibility that there is something going on, that maybe there was an investigation afoot, maybe there is some substance here when he was so definitive in his past testimony, as we all heard, and so the writer in the Rolling Stone is casting doubt on this new sense of concern that Clapper has of the possibility of something actually going on, and therefore that justifies continuing the effort to find counsel and continue to put emphasis on the story. But then he brings up the idea, well, unless there might be some money laundering in the background here, and in that case, then it would continue to be a story worth pursuing. So he wants to have it both ways. On the one hand, he's being a little more scholarly in realizing there's a contradiction with Clapper claiming some new sense of uncertainty when he was so certain that there wasn't any investigation going on and no evidence. Now he's opening the door. There is a possibility. So, but it seems really typical in the press. If there is a story, of course they're going to pursue it. If there isn't a story, but somebody thinks there might be a story, then that's a story in itself. And,
yes, if someone thinks there might be a story, that's a story.
That's a story, exactly. And the whole idea of, and we talked about this once a week or two ago, Tim, it struck me that in this dropping the word collusion.
Mhm.
You know, we're going to investigate the possible collusion,
Mhm.
and then pretty soon the word possible
Right,
drops
right.
from some in the media,
Yes,
and they
yes.
say we need to further explore the depth of the collusion.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
so they want to establish that there is collusion
Yes.
by using the word over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. You know, investigate whether there was, if there was, the possibility that there was,
Mhm.
and then suddenly those adjectives drop out of the
Mhm,
scene, and we've established, somebody wants to establish there was
Mhm,
collusion. Now we need to find out how deep it was and who exactly was involved. We don't know who was involved, but there's some in the media that want to establish the fact that there was collusion.
Mhm.
And then as we know, you repeat a lie a million times,
Mhm.
and the press is good at that,
Mhm.
whatever the agenda item is, and you establish it. You do that by stereotyping people. We saw that in various campaigns. Sarah Palin was a good one.
Mhm.
You stereotype her, and in the public mind, in the press's mind,
Mhm.
and then by transference they try to make it an established fact in the public's mind. The stereotypes become the fact.
Mhm. Yeah.
The the um, the supposition, the guess, the possibility
Mhm.
is led to become
Mhm.
established.
Mhm.
And that's what's going on here. But the other thing behind all of this that strikes me, Tim, is that, I mean, the Democratic strategy is to keep bad news and the possibility of corruption in the news every single day.
Well, especially in the current administration. I don't think that was the case during the Obama administration,
Right.
because the press pretty much worshipped Obama. But now, yes, they're doing everything they can, and they don't care if they undermine their own credibility, or even, I think, I hope many journalists are really embarrassed by the way that the Washington Post and New York Times are reporting this right now. After the election, New York Times actually apologized to its readers for having sort of thrown away its any pretense of objectivity. And they said that from now on we're going to do that again. But of course, they're still doing it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to this. The Rolling Stone article mentioned the FISA warrant against Carter Page. And I just want to go back to that and give people a chance to know what that was about. So so apparently and also Carter Page issued a statement about that last April. So I just wanted to remind people what that's about. So this according to the Washington Post article last April, this was when was this? April 11th or April 10th or so, that Washington Post reported this. The warrant granted them permission to monitor the communications of former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, the Washington Post said Tuesday. And it was granted as part of an ongoing investigation into possible leaks between Russian officials and members of the Trump campaign, the Washington Post reported. And Carter Page said in response to this that he was excited the truth is coming out. It shows how low the Clinton-Obama regime went to destroy our democracy and suppress dissidents who did not fully support their failed foreign policy. And he added, it will be interesting to see what comes out when the unjustified basis for those FISA requests are more fully disclosed over time. The Post reported that a 90-day warrant was issued and has been renewed more than once by the FISA court. So that is what explains a little bit more about what that was about. And I don't think he was saying that this should be fully disclosed over time, but I guess that time has not yet come. We still don't know what was really about that FISA court, which is the court operates in secret. So we don't know what is going on with that court at all. It may have been something completely not unrelated to anything that anyone is talking about.
And then we don't know dates when the warrant was issued or any reviews and reissuance you mentioned. We don't know what those dates
Well,
are.
the Post reported that it was issued for 90 days and it's been renewed more than once. Yeah. So we don't know if it's still going on, or what the warrant says, what it's all about, and what it authorizes for anyone to do.
Yeah.
But
And it makes people feel that their political impulses driving this whole process, and including within the court.
mm-hmm.
It's so clouded in secrecy. What is the nature of it? What is the purpose of it? Why is it being granted? Who is the FISA court? Those questions come to mind.
Yeah, the FISA court is something that I think a lot of the public is not aware of. It actually started back in the 1970s, but it was strengthened a great deal after 9/11, and but it is something that we need to take a closer look at some point, because it allows the government to act in rather extra legal, extra constitutional ways. But I keep trying to go in that direction. But let's not go there. We don't have we're not prepared to look at the FISA court this morning. But I think I would encourage people to research that. You can go online and research that, because it is a shadowy existence, and something that I think anyone who believes that transparency is an important part of democracy, we should be very concerned about. Of course, sometimes when you're dealing with foreign powers trying to gather intelligence in the United States, of course, in some cases you have to have secret warrants and things like that. But I think it's been used, or it's been abused, actually, a great deal, especially I would say during the last 16 years since 9/11. Let's see. We only have 1 minute until our next break, but let's talk a little bit about what the Trump administration is doing. According to this is a Reuters article this morning, or actually yesterday. The Trump administration is exploring whether it can use an obscure ethics rule to undermine the special counsel investigation into ties between President Donald Trump's campaign team and Russia. Two people familiar with the White House thinking said on Friday. Trump has said that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein's hiring of former FBI Director Robert Mueller as a special counsel to lead the investigation hurts our country terribly. Within hours of Mueller's appointment on Wednesday, the White House began reviewing the Code of Federal Regulations, which restricts newly hired government lawyers from investigating their prior law firm's clients for 1 year after their hiring, the source said. An executive order signed by Trump in January extended that period for 2 years. Mueller's former law firm, WilmerHale, represents Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who met with a Russian bank executive in December, and the president's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who is subject to a federal investigation. Legal experts said the ethics rules can be waived by the Justice Department, which appointed Mueller. He did not represent Kushner and Manafort directly at his former law firm. If the department did not grant a waiver, Mueller would be barred from investigating Kushner or Manafort, and this could greatly diminish the scope of the probe, experts said. The Justice Department is already reviewing Mueller's background as well as any potential conflicts of interest, said Department spokesman Sarah Isker Flores. Even if the Justice Department granted a waiver, the White House would consider using the ethics rule to create doubt about Mueller's ability to do his job fairly, the sources said. Administration legal advisors have been asked to determine if there was a basis for this. Let me just read a couple of tweets that President Trump put out on this subject. He says that this was on May 18th. He tweeted, "This is the greatest witch hunt of a politician in American history." And then again, with all of the illegal acts that took place in the Clinton campaign and Obama administration, there was never a special counsel appointed. Those two tweets he put out on May 18th about the appointment of a special counsel by the Department of Justice to investigate. Well, again, we're not really sure what they're investigating. We don't know the scope of it. Apparently, there may be some possibility that he cannot investigate certain people because Mueller was a lawyer and represented those people, and the federal regulations don't allow the lawyer to or a government employee to investigate someone that he has represented during the past 2 years. So, curiouser and curiouser as things
Murkier
go
and
on.
murkier, the fog thickens.
The fog thickens. The fog thickens, and the possibility, and perhaps the simplest explanation still remains, that there is nothing beyond the fog. That there is nothing beyond the fog. So anyway, we'll take a break now and come back with more news from a Chonyaku perspective as we go down this Saturday morning, May 20th, 2017.
And just like a drum, I can
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 20th, 2017, 8th year of Chungi, and the 4th month, 25th day by the heavenly calendar. So I want to go now to President Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia. He's in Saudi Arabia today. And just as we begin the coverage of this story, he gave us a tweet. Great, yeah. And he said 21 minutes ago, great to be in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Looking forward to the afternoon and evening ahead. And he's tweeted about 3 or 4 pictures, photographs. There's first one is of him coming off of Air Force One and with the Saudi king, I imagine. That doesn't say there who that is, but anyway. And also he's meeting there with their interpreters seated behind them, and then meeting again. And then they fly over by, I guess, the Saudi Air Force, I imagine. So he is in Saudi Arabia, and that hashtag POTUS Abroad is the hashtag there. I want to go to the Wall Street Journal story on this that was filed yesterday as the president was preparing to leave. This is filed out of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. President Donald Trump, who has frequently aired views hostile to Islam, is traveling to the religion's cradle in a trip intended to shore up his ties with the Muslim world. Saudi Arabia is rolling out the red carpet for Mr. Trump, who arrives in Riyadh on Saturday for a 2-day visit that marks the start of his first foreign trip as president. The capital's wide avenues are lined with Saudi and American flags and billboards featuring King Salman and Mr. Trump and a ubiquitous slogan, "Together we prevail." The visit, aimed at cementing ties with a key strategic ally, will also include a meeting with the leaders of around 40 Muslim-majority nations to discuss how to combat religious extremism, during which Mr. Trump is expected to deliver a speech about Islam. Well, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, that should be something.
The trip offers other unexpected flourishes, including a free concert by the American country singer Toby Keith and a Saudi lute player. The concert, open only to men over the age of 21, this is Saudi Arabia after all,
Yes, indeed.
is a rare event in a country where the conservative religious establishment frowns upon music. Wow, I didn't know that. On Friday, 400 Harley-Davidson bikers rode into the Saudi capital wearing jeans, bandanas, and a white polo shirts printed with the words "No to Terrorism." The parade, an initiative of the Saudi government's new entertainment agency, is part of an effort from the kingdom to convey a message of tolerance. But women still can't drive.
Wow.
It doesn't give the gender of the bikers, but I would imagine that they were all men.
These are not bikers from Europe or the United States. They're all Saudis.
We'll have to check that out. I get the impression that they were all Saudis and they were all men and they were all over the age of 21. That's the impression I'm getting here. Yeah. Saudi Arabia could be a formidable ally in shaping how Mr. Trump's policies are viewed in the Middle East in the wake of a campaign in which he called for a halt on Muslims entering the U.S. Campaign which he called for a halt of Muslims entering the U.S. As president, he initially called for a ban on travel from 7 Muslim-majority countries. People say a lot of things in campaigns. I do not believe for a minute that President Trump is anti-anything, Saudi Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubeir said. Mr. Trump's decision to travel to Saudi Arabia, he said, speaks volumes about his desire to turn the relationship with the Islamic world into a partnership. But the tension over Mr. Trump's comments during the campaign and into his executive orders banning travelers from certain Muslim-majority countries puts some of America's Muslim allies in an awkward position. The latest version of the ban is currently blocked by the courts. I think it's being appealed right now. The ban, or the block of the ban, is being appealed.
Right.
Tariq Bakit, the spokesman for the 57-nation Organization of Islamic Cooperation, a Jeddah-based group, said the visit is a sign that Mr. Trump isn't hostile to Islam, but he said the group remains concerned about the travel ban. Such selective and discriminatory acts will only serve to embolden the radical narratives of extremists, he said. The Saudi king's role as custodian of Islam's 2 holiest sites has long given the monarchy clout on religious matters far beyond the country's borders. Mr. Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama, also had high hopes for resetting U.S. relations with the Muslim world. Within 6 months of being sworn into office, Obama gave a speech in Cairo called A New Beginning. But the Obama administration often clashed with allies over regional policy and was unable to make progress toward a peaceful solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which Mr. Trump has set as a priority that he hopes to pursue by encouraging stronger ties between the Gulf states and Israel. In advance of the trip, Mr. Trump's national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, said the president's speech is intended to unite the broader Muslim world against common enemies of all civilization and to demonstrate America's commitment to our Muslim partner. Among the aides involved in crafting Mr. Trump's speech, said an administration official, is Stephen Miller, who also helped draft the executive order on travel. Saudi Arabia, which is majority Sunni Muslim, since sees the U.S. as a vital partner in confronting its chief regional rival, Iran, which is predominantly Shiite Muslim. The kingdom is keen to develop a strong rapport with the Trump administration, which has been critical of the 2015 nuclear deal Iran struck with the U.S. and other world powers. I'm a little bit concerned because oil and water don't mix.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that we'll have to wait for the speech to come out. I'm a little bit concerned that President Trump is trying to play both sides here. That he's sort of let's unite against terrorism and things like that. So let's see, May 2021. Okay, Trump's speech. I guess we'll know by tomorrow what that speech says.
Yeah, you think that even though there are people within Saudi Arabia, and you quoted one source there who was offended by his remarks, but meanwhile they do move positively forward. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of self-interest there in Saudi Arabia, and the battle within Islam itself between the two major factions.
We'll have to.
Is afoot here.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit concerned. We'll have to wait and see what he's saying in that speech, and I guess the fact that it's written by a person who helped write the travel ban or the is some reassurance, but. If Trump falls into the same trap as Merkel, I highly doubt that he would. But European leaders are saying, oh, yeah, we can all get along. There's nothing really. We do need to realize that there is a fundamental contradiction between Christianity and Islam.
Yeah.
And that is something that is, if you go to the core of Islam, that the idea of pedophilia and the misogyny is quite disturbing.
And those, in his mind, there might be those fights are there, but fights that are for another day. Even as the strategy with Russia is, let's meet and define our common enemy and work together on that as a starting point. That makes sense. And with the Saudis and others in the Muslim world to build that common ground. And yeah, there are more battles ahead, definitely. But it could be positive. We hope for the best.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
In other news, the United States has deployed a second carrier to the Korean region. And Chinese jets are challenging the U.S. planes. They're in the East China Sea. But in the key U.S. alliance in Northeast Asia, put to test with the election of new South Korean leader, is a article by Donald Kirk. He's written some pretty good articles in the past. Let's take a look at this one. Would Kim Jong-un mind giving Moon Jae-in a break? Kim Jong-un, of course, being the leader of North Korea and Moon Jae-in being the newly elected president of South Korea. More than any other South Korean leader in years, Moon would like nothing better than to be the one to bring about North-South reconciliation. Wouldn't it be great, Moon's newly appointed former activist must be saying, if Kim Jong-un invited Moon to Pyongyang instead of awaiting the right conditions? It would be so easy for Kim to outfox the Americans who clearly think Moon will mute his pronouncements about talks with the North and cooperate as did his predecessors. But no, right away Kim Jong-un opted to turn Moon's dreams into nightmares, directly challenging him by launching an intercontinental ballistic missile with a range of 4,500 kilometers. Nor was this one just another mid to short range shot. It soared an incredible 2,111 kilometers above the Earth, indicating it could easily have reached U.S. bases anywhere in Japan or, for that matter, the U.S. territory of Guam, home of the strategic Andersen Air Force Base from which U.S. B-1B bombers fly now and then over South Korea. Any hopes Moon may have of engaging the North in dialogue seem certain to run afoul of Kim's refusal to stop testing missiles capable of someday of carrying nuclear warheads to the U.S. mainland. With 59% of Korean voters in favor of someone other than Moon, he has no mandate to jettison the pro-American policies of Korean presidents since the founding of the Korean Republic under Syngman Rhee in 1948. Given the depth of conservative and moderate sentiment, Moon cannot show weakness in the face of North Korean threats. The rise of a liberal South Korea, moreover, still leaves relations between Seoul and Washington in flux. Moon is not going to be as enthusiastic about the U.S.-Korea alliance as would a conservative, but he cannot so easily turn against agreements made between the U.S. and the previous conservative regime. How can he call for the removal of the THAAD counter-missile battery, even as Kim Jong-un is challenging him with missile tests? Hardly a rabble-rousing leftist, Moon faces opposition from possibly a majority of his countrymen and will have difficulty mustering support in the National Assembly for reformist legislation if badly divided conservatives join forces. Under these circumstances, Moon has not only endorsed the U.S.-Korea alliance, but is going to Washington in the near future to meet President Trump, after having been widely quoted during his campaign as saying that he would first to see Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang. Considering Moon's eagerness for negotiations with the North, Trump and his team have to deal carefully with him in order to protect the U.S. Republic-Korea alliance. One sensitive issue, those annual U.S. ROK, Republic of Korea, war games that infuriate North Korea. Military commanders say they are essential. How else, they ask, can the 28,500 U.S. troops in Korea be ready to fight tonight on behalf of their South Korean ally? Moon's relationship with the U.S., moreover, will be complicated by some of Trump's remarks. He mentions here about how can they be ready to fight tonight on behalf of their South Korean ally. I remember attending a briefing by a U.S. Military official in Korea, where he said that there's a difference. At that time, this was before the fall of the Berlin Wall. He said that there's a big difference between the situation of NATO in Europe facing the Warsaw Pact forces. Warsaw Pact, I don't know if anybody remembers, this was the military grouping of the Soviet Union and East European countries that was facing off against NATO in Western Europe. He says there's a big difference between NATO versus Warsaw Pact in Europe and North Korea versus South Korea on the Korean Peninsula. He says in Europe, if the Warsaw Pact, if the Soviet Union were to stage an invasion of West Germany, for example, he said we would have some indications of that long before it actually happened. We would see military assets being brought towards the border, and basically we would say, "Oh, okay, here we come. We better get ready." But it's not the case in South Korea. Because in South Korea, he said, it's just a matter of minutes.
Assets are already in place.
Because the assets are already in place, and that's because on the Korean Peninsula, North Korea, the way their assets are deployed shows that they are not expecting an offensive ground attack from the south. They are not a first strike ground offensive is something that it's not in their calculation. because all or the vast majority of their artillery and military planes and fighters and so forth are stationed very, very close to the DMZ, where a preemptive attack from the south would actually be able to destroy very easily. So they're not expecting that. They're assuming that will not happen, and so they are able. So for them, they are able to conduct a surprise attack at any moment. And so yes, the U.S. troops in Korea do have to be ready to fight. So that is a big difference. And in order to do that, they say, the military commanders say, they have to have these annual exercises between the U.S. and the Republic of Korea. Because when it comes to wartime, the United States has operational control over the South Korean military.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the armistice that was established after the end of the Korean War never included any provisions regarding the North's ability to continue to arm and develop and secure the border, build up armaments around it, and military assets to their heart's desire. And so just intimidation is the name of the game, isn't it?
Well, many provisions of that armistice agreement have become dead letter. Yeah. Of course, South Korea never signed it in the first place. It was signed between North Korea, China, the United States. I don't think Soviet Union signed it either. No, North Korea, China, the United States signed it. And it was supposed to have a neutral nations supervisory commission. And I've forgotten who they were, but I think India, I remember, was one. Sweden, I think, maybe another. But anyway, and the neutral nations were supposed to be able to kind of police the demilitarized zone and make sure that, the provisions of the armistice were being followed. But that hasn't happened, and actually the demilitarized zone has become one of the most militarized zones in the world. Yeah. It's many things are very, very strange on the Korean Peninsula. The demilitarized zone is actually highly militarized, and there are a lot of weapons there.
And the whole strategy of developing the arms and assets along that line is, it's so beautiful, and they've used it to their benefit for all these decades, haven't they? To get their way with limited pressure from the international community, and growing more and more arrogant and aggressive with their...
The international community, and especially the press, has not taken North Korea seriously. Yeah. And they've used that to their advantage. Because behind this kind of, people sort of joke about North Korea, but behind that, North Korea has been developing step by step by step. And yes, they started from a very low level, but they've been constantly developing and using China and using Pakistan and using Iran to develop their nuclear weapons capability. And now, under the Trump administration, we find that they are capable of developing a nuclear missile that could strike the United States mainland within the next few years, before the end of Trump's first term. And there were opportunities in the past to actually deal with this. One major opportunity was in 1994, during the administration of President Carter, when a military strike against North Korea was actually considered and actually came very, very close to being conducted. But
was
it was
that in 1984, Tim?
94.
In 94.
Yes.
Okay, so under
President Clinton. I'm sorry, did I say Carter? I meant President Clinton. But then the reason I was thinking Carter, because former President Carter at that time then went to Pyongyang and talked to Kim Il-sung and said, I worked out a deal. Don't do the military strike. I worked out a deal. And so, then the Clinton administration negotiated with North Korea after that, and came up with something called the Mutual Agreed Framework. where the United States would give North Korea some money, I think $1.3 billion, and North Korea instead would behave themselves. But guess what? They got the money and they didn't behave themselves.
Took the money and ran.
They took the money and ran. But they took the money and they used the money to keep developing their nuclear capability. So, yeah, some of our money is in those nuclear programs.
That really hurts.
That really hurts. And now, we've come to a point where the can no longer be kicked any further down the road because we road. And I'm still concerned that North Korea will conduct its sixth nuclear test, and that may be the red line where Trump will feel, or someone will feel, the necessity to act militarily. I'm hoping that it will be China, not the United States, that will take military action. I'm hoping that China will see it in its interest to eliminate that nuclear program once and for all. And I think there are possibilities for that. It was under Jiang Zemin, the two presidents back, that China supported North Korea's nuclear program. The current president, Xi Jinping, is in a political struggle against the allies of Jiang Zemin. And perhaps within the context of that struggle, Xi Jinping will find it in his interest, not only in China's interest, but in his personal interest, to eliminate the North Korean nuclear program. Yeah. That would be something that would be great. But we'll have to see. I hope that the United States, very much hope the United States does not have to act, because the repercussions could be terrible. There are hundreds of thousands of U.S. citizens living in South Korea, and a retaliatory strike by North Korea could be devastating not only on the South Korean people, but also the United States citizens and on the citizens of many, many other countries who are living in Seoul and in the surrounding area today, because Seoul is a very cosmopolitan city, and there are many foreigners living there. Let's take a break now, and we'll come back with more news from a Tony Cook perspective after this break.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 20th, 2017. We're in the 8th month of Chungi, 4th month and the 25th day by the heavenly calendar. Bill wanted to say something about China and North Korea. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the analysts taking a look at the situation there seem to be concluding there's no good option here. That Trump doesn't have an option. He can't launch cruise missiles like he did in Syria at a limited strike, because of the danger of that creating an all-out war, potentially, because you're dealing with a loose cannon. You don't know what he would do, even though it would appear limited. On the other hand, you think that that he's bold enough
Mhm.
that he actually might try to do something like that,
Mhm.
and it would be suicide for Kim Jong Un to do anything about that.
Mhm.
Why would he? He's going to then hit Seoul because of that. That
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense because he has to know that he'll be obliterated if he does that. So there's an argument that Trump could take action
Yes.
in looking at it from that perspective.
Mhm.
The other one is that for China to hit them, some analysts have said, then they would be put in a position of starting some war, and nukes could fly.
Well,
And that they wouldn't want to do that because they wouldn't want to be responsible for that. Is one perspective on them initiating a military action against the North. What do you say to that?
If the United States were to attack North Korea, that could definitely start a war between the United States and China, because China has a kind of a mutual defense treaty or defense treaty with North Korea that would, at least under international law, oblige them to defend North Korea. But if China were to attack North Korea, who's going to jump in on North Korea's side? I mean, it's just between China and North Korea, and I don't see how that would start a wider war.
Mm-hmm.
And China, I hope they can show that they are demonstrate that they're capable of dealing with what is a relatively small state on their border.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Well, it's interesting because we saw that in the Syria case, the launch of those cruise missiles was done after alerting the Russians. And so the Russians are into Syria, and we don't know what the nature of that agreement is. I don't know if it's as formal an agreement as China has with North Korea. But they are in there and defending Syria. And so I'm just curious whether Donald Trump could, he's had that personal relationship development with a key leader in China, and could he alert him and then say, we're going to do this and it's just this, and then, or discuss it with them and say either we're going to do it or you're going to do it.
Well, that's
What about
basically, I
that?
think, what he said to Xi Jinping in Mar-a-Lago in early April when they met there. That either you do it or we do it. We want you to take. If it'd be great if you could take care of this problem, but if you can't take care of it, then we certainly will. So that's why I'm hoping, and I guess I get the feeling that Trump is hoping that Xi Jinping somehow do it. So the thing is whether you freeze the program. There are two options. One is to freeze the program. The other is to eliminate the program. And some people have said that, well, if you prevent them from testing, at least you know that operationally their nuclear weapons are not a threat, because you cannot, apparently you cannot really have a credible nuclear force unless you are testing it on a fairly regular basis. So if you just stop the testing, then that basically defangs North Korea as a nuclear threat. But my feeling, though, is that that's okay. That's the common sense of other nuclear powers. North Korea often defies common sense, in my experience, and they are able to do a lot with very little. They practice doing that because they've been under sanctions and so forth for many, many years. So I'm not completely confident that principle would apply to North Korea. I would say that as long as North Korea has nuclear weapons, to consider them a threat, because they will somehow, some way, deliver them to the United States. And that is their objective, to blow up the White House or to blow up Washington. In those videos that they keep producing. That is their stated objective, and it may not happen 5 years from now. It may not happen 10 or 20 years from now, but somehow, some way, as long as this regime continues, that goal will stay alive, and they will continue to make efforts toward that goal. Yeah. So I don't think that freezing the nuclear program will be enough.
Yeah. Well, it is good that that the U.S. and China are at least developing some relationship of mutual agreement around common interest.
And
about the
that's
threat
kind of
in
the
north.
interesting. That's kind of the interesting sort of the benefits, I guess you can see from this, or benefit. I don't know, but the United States and China now have something to talk.
Right, and if they can both come to agreement, we can't
Yeah.
kick. Both of them agreed we can no longer kick the can down the road because
Right.
the can has nuclear weapons in it. Then that's another step where there's an absolute facing of that reality.
Meanwhile, China and the United States have other things to talk about. One of those is the South China Sea, where interests do not coincide as much as they do, as much as they appear that they might on the Korean Peninsula, where China is, of course, building artificial islands and claiming almost all of that ocean, or that body of water, as their own territory. But on Thursday, Philippine Foreign Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano suggested the Association of Southeast Asian Nations should reach a gentleman's agreement on South China Sea waterways because there is no legal authority to enforce a binding contract for navigation through the region. It's been a long time since I heard ASEAN. I see, okay. ASEAN, this is coming out of ASEAN. For a minute there, I thought it was a CETO, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, which was America's attempt to create something like NATO in Southeast Asia. But this is coming out of ASEAN. Legally binding, which court can the parties go to, and the countries that do not comply, will they respect that court? Cayetano said to reporters, as reported by Reuters. Let's start with it being binding, gentleman's agreement. We have a community of nations that signed it. He was referring to the draft framework for a South China Sea Code of Conduct ASEAN and China on Thursday. Cayetano seemed to be throwing in the towel on getting China to sign a more stringent contract. As Reuters delicately puts it, there is a regional skepticism whether Beijing will commit to rules likely to restrain its maritime ambitions. Such a gentleman's agreement would control shipping lanes that have $5 trillion per year in commerce. The proposal follows remarks by President Rodrigo Duterte that China was installing some kind of armed garrison on the disputed South China Sea islands, it claims. Reuters notes that some of ASEAN's representatives believe China is playing along with the draft framework merely to buy time for Beijing to wrap up construction activities, at which point Chinese ownership of everything Beijing covets in the region would be a fait accompli, despite the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruling that Chinese claims of sovereignty last year. China largely ignored the ruling, which explains Cayetano's doubt the controlling legal authority to enforce anything stricter than a gentleman's agreement could be found. So I guess Philippines are kind of grasping at straws there, trying to hopefully, hope that this is kind of like a burglar invades your house and you hope that he won't take anything and won't hurt anybody, will just go quietly based on a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah.
Let's take a break now, and we'll be back in a minute with more news from a Chunikook perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today. Carr Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 20th, 2017. We're in the 8th year of Chungi and the 4th month and the 25th day by the Heavenly Calendar. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheonryuk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Bill Brunhofer this morning.
Good morning.
And let's see. We were going to talk about we were talking about the Philippines at the sea. Why don't we talk a little bit more about that, shall we?
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, the fact that the U.S., that Donald Trump has apparently struck a good chord with the Chinese leadership, and it might prove useful in North Korea. I mean, that building of rapport, if you will, or communication or common ground it could be perhaps wisely used to build some common ground of resistance in the South. But I think it seems like the U.S. needs to take a stand down there to limit the move of China and not fear consequences by taking a stand in line with the international community and the ruling about their trying to sovereignty over air and sea lanes, etc.
I'm kind of quite a bit skeptical about U.S. ability to stop China in the South China Sea. Yeah. Right now, the U.S. Is putting a lot of emphasis and a lot of dependence on China. Think about North Korea. And so how are you going to be friends with China on the Korean Peninsula, but then be an adversary of China in the South China Sea? So it seems that for the time being, the U.S. is looking the other way right now. And I think that maybe that's one of the reasons that the Philippine foreign minister is suggesting kind of this gentleman's agreement, which is obviously an attempt to grasp at straws there, is hoping that something good will happen and that China, out of the goodness of its heart, will stop this incredible aggression there in the South China, where it is claiming basically the entire body of water going down even right off of Indonesia. I don't see much hope there of, and I think events will have to play out. But that would, of course, be another reason for taking care of North Korea quickly, so that the U.S. can get back to stopping China there. There are no good options there on the Korean Peninsula, because allowing China to act against North Korea, I said, is better than the U.S. Taking military action. But then that will give China more influence on the North Korean Peninsula. It will make China stronger. But so no good options. But that certainly that would seem to be the better or the least bad of all the other options.
Working from behind the scenes with the countries in the South China Sea area and the international community to continue to put pressure on China is the track to take.
Yeah, we pray very much that God's will be done there. We know that God is there, and we hope that He can be in control of the events there. Another story about China, which we covered. Did we cover this a couple days ago about the ban on dog meat at the Dog Meat Festival in China? Do you remember that? I remember looking at the story, but I don't remember if it actually.
It rings a bell.
Okay, but now we see that there's another story where it says that human rights activists are skeptical of China's ban on Yulin Dog Meat Festival. China's government will, I think, Father, as I understand, I'll have to check this with the king. As I understand, he did not encourage, he kind of discouraged the people in Korea from eating dog meat. Although in Korea, too, dog meat is a dish. It is considered a delicacy. And the reasons that people would give are kind of, junk science. They would say that, the dogs don't sweat from their body. Instead, they hang their tongue out and they sweat through the tongue. They maintain their body temperature by releasing heat through their tongue. And that's why they hang their tongue out when it gets hot. And so, because dogs don't sweat, it's good to eat dog meat in the summertime when it's hot. This is true.
Because they don't sweat.
Yes.
And the connection?
Well, if you don't get it, you don't get it. If you haven't gotten it already, you don't get it. So anyway.
There's no connection there at all.
But Father, as I understand, discouraged the eating of dogs. But not that it was I don't know if it was a sin, but he discouraged it. I suppose if the Messiah discourages it, then maybe it is a sin. But China's government will reportedly ban dog meat from being sold at this year's annual barbaric Yulin Festival. However, it is likely cats will be served instead. And animal rights activists note that prior alleged bans on dog meat have usually not prevented the Yulin Festival from occurring. Grassroots campaigns and activists have worked to ban the dog meat trade from taking place throughout Asia. Increased media coverage on the issue has recently helped bring the matter to the fore. Still, the dog and cat meat trade persists in China, South Korea, Cambodia, Thailand, and other countries. I've never heard of a cat meat in South Korea.
No, a culture where cat meat is a delicacy. I guess the other thing with dogs is they're so indiscriminate with what they eat. Would be a reason to be concerned about them. They're not like cattle that can be fed or graze and have a pattern of eating behavior that's consistent in at least grain areas or grass areas and so forth. They'll eat anything, dogs will, and that's a concern. That means they could be carrying lots of things too.
The Yulin Festival began in 2010. Every year on the first day of the summer solstice. Those who partake believe that eating dog meat cools the body in the summer months. See, now you get the connection?
Got it. Perfect sense.
Each year, over 10 million dogs and 4 million cats are reportedly murdered for their meat. Most of the dogs are domestic pets from families or strays taken from the streets. and sent to notorious slaughterhouses. So according to the Daily Mail, the Chinese government claims the ban will enter into effect on June 15th, 1 week before the Yulin Festival begins. Perpetrators found selling or trading dog meat face fines of up to about $14,500 US and risk arrest. The Daily Mail notes, at its height, an estimated 10,000 to 15,000 dogs were killed at Yulin, reduced to 2,000 to 3,000 in recent years. However, according to Mark Ching, founder of the nonprofit Animal Hope and Wellness Foundation and one of the leaders of the movement to end the dog meat trade, the ban is an attempt to deflect media attention away from the festival and has allegedly been scheduled to take effect every year before the festival, but has failed to do so. Ching issued a statement to Breitbart News regarding the news that dog meat would be banned from this year's event. Every year they say the same thing. And when the festival begins, thousands of dogs are tortured. If it becomes true, then it is a victory for the animals. But do not let up the fight. Do not think for 1 minute it is over. Protest. Use your words and your voice. Be their hero. There are no victories until laws are changed. No milestones are changed until what people say actually happens. While we believe the government wants to change, and while we are trying to work with them to bring that to fruition, and never give in to what is said each year. It never becomes reality. Scream for them, because that is what they do when they are tortured. Be their voice because they are drowned. They have no words. Speak until we see the end. Stand until justice is served. Ching has personally rescued dogs from China and other countries at great risk. The Animal Hope and Wellness Foundation created a video last year to raise greater awareness. That's another aspect of China that is going on. Whether you're a dog person or a cat person, that's certainly a matter for concern. Of course, people eat many different things. I'm sure that as we travel the world, we've seen many different things. Let's look at this, a story from out of New Orleans. Civil War monuments caused a great migration out of the city. According to, this is the mayor, Mitch Landrieu of New Orleans, says residents of this city left because of monuments dedicated to Civil War era icons. In a press scrum, Landrieu told the media that the Confederate monuments, which he is in the final stages of removing, have run people out of the city. Say this for the people that are interested in the cost, Landrieu said. The cultural and economic and spiritual loss to the city for having those statues up that have run people out of the city. Landrieu claimed the great migration that sent some of our best and brightest to places across the country that we don't have the benefit of has been incredible. Historians in the past have said that the opposite is true of New Orleans, however, arguing that the city attracts tourists and residents because of its rich history and public museum-like displays. Landrieu made the statement hours before the city began removing one of the most famous monuments, a statue of General Robert E. Lee at Lee Circle. Other monuments already removed by the Landrieu administration include the Battle at Liberty Place, Jefferson Davis, and P.G.T. Beauregard monuments. Landrieu's comments were made despite no evidence showing such a migration in the last decade due to Civil War-era monuments. There has been, however, a growing crime problem in New Orleans before Hurricane Katrina. New Orleans suffered from widespread murder, shooting, and burglaries. In the years following Katrina, the city had gotten safer. More than a decade later, New Orleans has slowly creeped to pre-Katrina crime levels. This year, the city's murder rate has spiked 70% compared to last year, as well as an increase in assaults. The city is facing a larger opioid epidemic as drug traffickers feel, as the New Orleans Police Department remains understaffed. This is a local issue, and whether to remove the monuments or not is certainly something that the people of the city can decide. But I just wonder whether this is true that erasing history will, I wonder if that's really the reason that people are fleeing New Orleans, or whether it is the rising
because of the
crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't have any data. I mean, we hear these reports, but there's no evidence
Hmm.
to support the claim. Well, meanwhile, we know that crime does drive people away.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
There's
see,
data on
we
that.
do have a data point here. The city's murder rate has spiked 70% compared to last year. That might have something to do with people moving away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would seem that rather than, instead of removing monuments, maybe if they gave people the ability to defend themselves more widely, then that would help to keep people in the city and also to lower the crime rate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like to look at this article from Japan. Allow Akihito to abdicate the throne. The current emperor of Japan wants to quit, but legally he can't. And so, or they don't want him to. Although, in past history in Japan, many emperors have abdicated before they died and let their sons or nephews or whatever brothers take over. On Friday, the Japanese cabinet approved a bill that would allow 83-year-old Emperor Akihito to abdicate his throne. The bill does not abolish the monarchy. As CNN observes, Emperor Akihito is ready to pass the throne along to his oldest son, 56-year-old Crown Prince Naruhito. In fact, the bill specifically refers to Akihito instead of changing the rules of abdication for all emperors to follow because, as the Daily Saba puts it, the conservative government of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is reluctant to open the imperial system to wide-ranging debate. However, Daily Saba notes there is strong popular support in Japan for a permanent law on abdication. Although Akihito and his Empress Michiko are currently in good health, he has publicly expressed concerns about their advancing age becoming an impediment to their official duties. When I consider that my fitness level is gradually declining, I am worried that it may become difficult for me to carry out my duties as the of the state with my whole being, as I have done until now, Akihito said last year. The BBC recalls that the emperor has undergone both heart surgery and treatment for prostate cancer. He has been on the throne since 1989, when he succeeded Hirohito, the ruler who brought Japan into World War II and became the 125th emperor. The Japanese imperial line is the longest unbroken hereditary monarchy in the world, stretching back for 14 centuries. Akihito is a direct descendant of the first emperor, Jimmu, who reigned around 660 BC. Okay, so there you see a contradiction, because if the line goes back only 14 centuries, how is it that the first emperor reigned 660 BC, which would be, 28 centuries? Anyway, we won't go into that. Yeah. Empress Michiko is the first empress of common birth in the entire history of Japan, celebrated as Japan's answer to when she married Akihito in 1959. She said she was surprised and pained when she learned of her husband's desire to abdicate while still alive. Legislation to permit abdication is necessary because emperors are currently required to serve for life under Japanese law. The previous voluntary abdication occurred in 1817 when the scholarly Emperor Kokaku retired after an exceptionally long reign. Following approval by the cabinet, the bill must still be debated and approved by the Japanese Parliament, but plans are already being made for Akihito to pass the throne along to Naruhito on New Year's Day 2019. Another possible date is the Emperor Akihito's birthday. Yeah, the imperial system in Japan is an interesting thing.
It parallels in some ways like the royal family in England, does it? In any way? It's the maintenance of this sort of tradition. It pays for it.
But it's very different.
It's different, yeah.
Yeah, because, in England, in Europe, you had a bunch of royal families, and they were all intermarrying. And
Right.
So, for example, the British royal family, I think, comes from Germany,
Yeah.
And so forth. And actually, Prince Philip actually was born in Greece and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas in Japan, it would certainly be unthinkable to have a foreigner come in as emperor or even as empress, even to have or any member of the imperial family to marry someone that is not a Japanese, not a 100% pure Japanese, would be completely unthinkable.
The institution as an institution, apart from that
Mhm.
matter of race and people intermarrying
Mhm.
from other countries. But just the point I was making was just that there is this royal element, right?
There is a royal element, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Maintain it and support it.
well,
And there's
yeah,
some sort of tradition behind maintaining it and support for it, right?
the support for the imperial family, I think, goes up and down.
Yeah.
And I keep remembering a time when I wrote a mildly critical article about the imperial family in Japan. I published it in Japan.
And what happened?
And I got this letter that was written in brush
In brush.
with the charcoal ink.
Uh-huh.
Just to get that kind of a letter, just to open a letter, not typed or not written in pen, but written in the traditional brush style of itself. 'Cause obviously, it was a right-wing person who did not approve of my article.
Yeah.
So there are very, very strong feelings.
Defense of that institution. Right?
Yes, in defense of that institution among certainly the right in Japan, the nationalistic element in Japan. Because, there are people who feel that Japan got a raw deal and that Japan should not have lost World War II and that Japan was right in fighting World War II. So there is a strong element in Japan that that. Let's not go too far down that road. Let's take a break instead and come back with different news on the King's Report. Welcome back to the King's Report on Saturday, May 20th, 2017. And I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chanuguk, Hyungjin Moon. I'm here with Bill Brunhofer this morning. And during this segment, I want to go into an article that is actually in the National Review online site, written by Victor Davis Hanson of the Hoover Institution. And it's called Severed Heads. This is an opinion piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a column.
Analysis.
An analysis, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong article. Yeah. Can Trump successfully remodel the GOP? If Trumpism succeeds, it could replace mainstream Republicanism. Hansen says, the Republican Party establishment is caught in an existential paradox. Without Donald Trump's populist and nationalist 2016 campaign, the GOP probably would not have won the presidency, nor would Republicans now enjoy such lopsided control of state legislatures and governorships, as well as majorities in the House and Senate, and likely control of the Supreme Court for a generation. So are conservatives angry at the apostate Trump or indebted to him for helping them politically when they were not able to help themselves? For a similar sense of paradox, imagine if a novice outsider, such as a billionaire entrepreneur Cuban, had captured the Democratic nomination and then won the presidency, but did not run on either Bernie Sanders' progressive redistribution, Barack Obama's identity politics, or Hillary Clinton's high taxes and increased regulation. Would liberals be happy, conflicted, or seething? For now, most Republicans are looking Trump's bothersome character excesses without conceding that his impulsiveness and bluntness may well have contributed to his success after Republican sobriety and traditionalism failed.
Very good point.
Republicans concentrate on what they like in the Trump agenda: military spending increases, energy expansion, deterrence abroad, tax and regulatory reform, and the repeal and replacement of the Affordable Care Act. And they ignore the inherent contradictions between Trumpism and their own political creed. But there are many fault lines that will loom large in the next few years. Doctrinaire conservatives believe that unfettered free trade is essential, even if it is sometimes not fair or reciprocal. Establishment Republicans privately argue that cheap imports into the United States at least keep inflation low. If our trade partners dump state-subsidized products into the U.S., it is to their long-term disadvantage. In this mainstream Republican view, the role of a superpower is to endure trade deficits to help its less powerful allies and keep the global order prosperous and stable. But Trump's idea of fair trade trumps free trade. Trump is not willing to accept a permanent Midwest price of globalization. If there are to be sacrificial lambs in world trade for Trump, it is better that they reside in China, South Korea, and Germany, nations that, for a change, can try finding any upside to running huge trade deficits. Unlike doctrinaire Republicans, Trump believes that illegal immigration is a big and bad deal. The Republican establishment's employers' argument is that illegal immigration ensures that the sort of work, quote, Americans won't do, unquote, is actually done. Or some establishment Republicans believe that undocumented migrants at the southern border will one day become conservative, family values, unquote, voters. Not so Trumpism. It seeks to help the working class by stopping the importation of cheap labor. It believes that secure borders will restore the sanctity of law and that the end of illegal immigration will lead to integration and assimilation of Latino minority groups. In the long run, Mexico will be a better neighbor by not counting on impoverished expatriates to prop up an often corrupt government in Mexico City and by addressing the plight of its impoverished rather than exporting its poor. Trumpism views the world abroad largely in terms of realist deterrence. Outside the West, the world is a mess, and it will probably not change and cannot be forced to change because of American blood and treasure spent on trying to replicate America abroad. Instead, Trumpism seems to want to deter rivals to ensure a calm global order. Trumpism has no illusions that there will ever be a world of liberal democracies, It seeks instead only to make sure enemies understand that any future aggression will not be worth the anticipated benefits. As for dictators such as those in the Philippines or Egypt, Trumpism argues that it makes little sense to snub autocratic friends while cutting deals with autocratic enemies like those of Iran or Cuba. On matters of identity politics, Republicans have often sought to play down, but not actively oppose, racial, ethnic, or gender pressure groups. The strategy has been to not antagonize the ethnic and race industries in receiving a greater share of the minority vote. Trump is politically incorrect. He sees a person's pocketbook, not his outward appearance, as the key to his allegiance. Through deregulation, tax reform, immigration reform, and fair trade, Trump hopes to help the economy grow by 3% a year. Such economic growth has not happened in over a decade. But if Trumpism works, then prosperity will supposedly unite Americans more than identity politics can divide them. In other words, Trump apparently believes that if he achieves 3% GDP growth and avoids a major war abroad, his brand of economic nationalism, realist deterrence, and America First chauvinism will replace mainstream republicanism. If he stalls the economy or gets into a quagmire abroad, then Trump will end up like most other American populist mavericks as an interesting footnote. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting analysis of the difference between what Trump believes and what mainstream republicanism has believed. And Trump certainly during the election campaign had to run against not only the Democratic Party, but also the Republican establishment, in addition to the media and to Hollywood and financial, a lot of the financial sector and everything like that. But you recommended this article for this morning's King's Report. Maybe you can talk at length about why you did so.
Well, I really like Victor David Hanson's historical perspective and his reputation as a historian and a military strategist too. And the other interesting thing about him, he's a farmer, and he's like a second, third generation farmer that inherited the farm his grandfather established, and he works the farm too. So he puts on his blue jeans and climbs on the tractor. He's got some vines, I guess, and I don't know what other products may remain on his farm that's gotten smaller over the years, but he still maintains it. And so he has an agricultural root, which makes him a really interesting person, a scholar and a writer, an author, historian, military strategist. And I find his perspective really refreshing, and you don't find it everywhere else. On Trumpism, I think what it shows about Trump is more than just a businessman with a variety of ideas, and mainly interested in creating a business environment that's conducive to business. There are ideals behind those Trumpisms, as he puts it, and ideals of, so you could say that there is an idealist in Trump, and a belief that, you know, the unfettered release of creativity and ingenuity in businesses without over-regulation can be a good for the economy and help grow it and stimulate it in positive ways, and opens a ground for creating a positive environment for business competition. Those are positive things. And on the borders, that it makes no sense to have open borders. We see crime comes in all sort of untold expenses on the community, and lots of downside to it. And anyway, these are some of the ideas that prompted me to want to send that along to you, and that show in my mind that Trump is an economic idealist, and his belief in nationalism, which is about sovereignty, is something of a positive value, and that there can be free trade that's fair. That free trade is fair. So he's not against free trade as long as it's not unfair. And there's a positive thing about it. On the liberal side, they'll never call his idea of competition, fair trade, and his idea of fairness, they always want to say, is tariffs. So they want to label, again, which is their ploy, label things and put a negative spin on them. But the key thing that he's talking about is fair trade, that you negotiate that. And it's not about tariffs on everything, which has a bad connotation. So I think in those areas, economics, the law and order, immigration system that's controlled, that these are positives, reinforce law and order. And the other thing on immigration, he says, is that that the United States can better integrate people that are brought in an orderly fashion, and brought in because they have positive reasons for coming here, not an open border where they're just fleeing for all various kinds of reasons, and many not related to, and many not positive about the U.S. Just taking advantage or seeking out some benefit, or riding on the largesse of the U.S. economy and the social services that are available here.
Of course, much of the 19th century, America did have an open border when people were coming from, before Ellis Island. I mean, and that was, I think Ellis Island was about the 1880s or something like that. But that began 1880s or 90s.
Yeah.
Before that, it was pretty much of an open border. And when my great grandfather came in the 1860s, and at that time there weren't even any passports. You just get on a ship and go, and you'd arrive here, and you would just sort of get off and do the best you could. Of course, then there was no welfare system then, a government welfare system. There were charities, of course, and people could depend on. But there was no government welfare or anything like that. But my point I wanted to make is that if Trump believes that a 3% GDP is going to solve lots of problems, then he may be well on the way towards achieving that. Right now, unemployment, of course, is down, and the Atlanta Fed, we covered this article a few days ago, Atlanta Fed is projecting that the second quarter GDP will be 4% on an annualized basis, which is 4% actually is quite high. And if that, we'll have to see if that actually turns out. But it looks like now that the economy is improving. And of course, the stock market is around, it's been going up and down around between 20,500 and 21,000. And it's it's at the highest level in its history. The Dow Jones I'm referring to. So we'll have to, and of course, if when the economy's good, it's true that a lot of other problems sort of fall by the wayside, and it's when the economy's down that all sorts of problems come up. But we'll have to see, though, because of course the Democrats, we don't care about the economy. We just want to impeach Trump.
Yeah. Well, there's many. Just having a strong economy means a lot of things. More people are working. If people are working, they're not on rolls and they're not taking social services. It has social benefits, psychological, personal benefits, and a lot of things that are altruistic are involved in that whole growth of an economy.
Of course, the king has emphasized that the important thing about Trump, and the reason that the king supports him so strongly, is that Trump is about sovereignty. It's about sovereignty, and he's going up against the globalist attempts to concentrate sovereignty and power in globalist organizations, such as the United Nations, such as the European Union, such as the North American Free Trade Agreement, such as TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and that these kinds of organizations which take sovereignty away from the people and sort of suck it up into a centralized power, into a kind of a global dictatorship, a communist dictatorship or fascist dictatorship, that is what the king sees very much as being opposed to God's providence, because God's purpose is to liberate people and to give freedom to people. That means to give them sovereignty. And that's why he says that the kingdom of heaven will be a kingdom where each family will be its own kingdom, and that there will be of course, God and true parents, and Christ is the King of kings. And his representative on earth is then the representative body, and inheritor on earth will always be, in each generation, will always be the king of. So this article refers to Trump's chauvinism, but it's not chauvinism because it is an attempt to say that the sovereignty belongs to the people, and that was the idea of the American Republic when it first began. And of course, over the years that has deteriorated with the concentration of power in the federal government, and now concentration of power more and more into international organizations. So that is what Trump is fighting, and that is why the king sees him as an important providential fighting on God's side. And so we hope very much that he will be successful in that respect. Let's get back to this again after we take a short break.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. Best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report on a Saturday morning. It's May 20th, 2017. Like April outside, it's rather cool, below normal temperatures for a change. And we're in the fourth month, the 25th day in the 8th year of Cheongi. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And I'm here with Bill Brunhofer. So, Bill, did you want to say some things about the article that we covered in the last segment?
Yes, Tim. Picking up on this Cheongguk theme of sovereignty, and the Trumpisms that you allude to as giving support to the idea of sovereignty, and just to underline that, I think in God's kingdom of sovereignty, then each person is to be understood as a sovereign with responsibility and freedom to exercise their skills, their talents, their abilities. And when you create an environment that promotes dependence upon a governmental largesse rather than an environment which is more conducive to people exercising their sovereignty, that's what the Cheongguk Constitution is all about. And what we believe God's kingdom is about, one where people are liberated and not dependent. And to be liberated means to be capable. To be capable is to be free and responsible. An economy that's growing and is expanding creates opportunity for people to use their talents and to offer their talents to community in a marketplace where offering the best generally provides the best return, and you get a benefit by providing something that's beneficial,
Yeah.
and you get a mutual return of benefit through that effort. So that in my mind, the ideas that Victor Davis Hanson identifies within Trumpism are the very ideas that support the development of sovereignty, the Second Amendment, a growing economy where there's opportunity, limiting government and social dependence, and creating more communal support to people that need help. And safety nets, yes, but not dependent systems that we have today that are available and passed on from generation to generation. Even like you have these rental properties in New York City. That's another famous element that.
Tell us about that.
Well, those are subsidized housing, rent control.
Oh, I see.
What do you call those? There's a name for it, but it's like in perpetuity. You can rent at a reduced rate in New York City, and it's really rent control. And these as I understand it, these possessions can be passed on from family to family, but they're indicative of a culture of creating dependence on governmental systems, rather than allowing people to in Chanil Guk to freely exercise their sovereignty in all these areas.
Thank you. More about President Trump and his battle against the Washington deep state. There's an article in the World Tribune about how Washington watchdog declares war on the deep state. This is the Judicial Watch is now suing to get information about leaks. They're now going to support Trump in that way. It says that the deep state is out of control, and watchdog organization Judicial Watch is taking legal action to stop it. Washington's media and top investigative agencies gave a pass to Hillary Clinton's collusion with Russia and the Clinton Foundation. Clinton Foundation was an incredibly corrupt organization. It was basically just an ATM for the Clinton family and their close supporters, as well as to felonious and leaking of intelligence that have targeted a duly elected president of the United States. Now, Judicial Watch has filed a suit against the CIA, Department of Justice, and Treasury Department seeking records and communications on intelligence leaks. Washington doesn't want the American people. Washington doesn't want what the American people want, Judicial Watch said in its appeal to help expose the deep state by signing a petition. There is a deep state, shadow government in place. A government staffed by recent appointees or hires of Obama. There are lots of Democrats in the bureaucracy and lots of Republicans who think they know better than President Trump and are willing to thwart the rule of law. It's not Republican versus Democrat or conservative versus liberal. It's Washington establishment versus the people. That's quotes from Deep State. They will go to virtually any lengths to maintain the status quo and the public corruption that erodes our Constitution. We've seen this with disclosure of communications, intelligence information aimed at destroying President Trump's National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Mike Flynn. This is all part of a political smear job by the Washington establishment, who are rightly terrified of President Trump and the swamp draining that he has promised. They are actively organizing against him and subverting the law. Fortunately, Judicial Watch aims to get to the truth behind these crimes. We filed a lawsuit against the CIA, the Department of Justice, and the Treasury Department for records on these illegal leaks. And then there is a link to Judicial Watch's petition. Here it's called a lawsuit to expose the CIA and the DOJ's illegal intelligence leaks. Help expose the deep state. And it says Washington. Okay, then it says. Sign the petition to support our lawsuit against members of the shadow government. Yeah, so this looks like something pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah?
Well, it does. And the other interesting
I'll
thing
go ahead and sign
about
it
it
right
is
now.
the illegal leaks of, and we talked about it earlier, anonymous sources who spoke. Somebody said something about 30 sources said something about Trump or whatever. is and all the illegal leaks are becoming acceptable. On the one hand, you have politicians, even Democrats, saying yes, they'll admit that illegal leaks are improper and they're illegal, and those people should be convicted. But there's never one conviction. And so it's just lip service. It's meaningless. And meanwhile, the illegal leaks continue to be mainstreamed and become an acceptable standard and a documented resource. You know, and we slip into that category, just as these unnamed sources who reported this on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to make a statement from a meeting with Trump. But it's given the veracity of a documented truth, and it is, and it's considered evidence virtually today. And so that's where we've gone with leaks and anonymous sources who speak on condition of anonymity, and it's just a standard that the press has to rely on them, and both conservatives and liberals accept this. And they accept that these leaks come, and that they use the term illegal, but nobody means anything by it anymore, do they? Is there any meaning to it?
Well,
it's good that Judicial Watch is raising this suit.
Yeah, so I signed the petition just now, and I would encourage others to go to. Let's see if I can. You can go to worldtribune.com and find that article. And I'll try to put it on my Facebook later on, and try to put the link to the petition there later on, and so we'll get it. But there is this certainly a war going on, and Trump needs all the support that he can get. And I think it's up to us who voted for him to try and support him so that he can. Resist and defeat this effort to undermine his presidency by those who don't recognize the election of last November.
And the dangers that these leaks cause.
Oh yeah. It is a fundamental position that they don't just think that they know better than the president. They think that the president should not be president.
Exactly.
They don't recognize the validity of that election. And
it's their very right and responsibility to speak out about it and leak things, because it's what he's doing is wrong and it needs to be exposed.
That's what they feel. But the president is the president, and certainly it's undermining our democratic institutions, our democratic process, our democratic system of government. And maybe this is what happens to all democracies towards the end. And our democracy has been going on now for more than 200 years. But I think on average, democratic systems tend to last about 250 years. Maybe we're coming to the end of that. I don't know. I would think so, because I would think that the libertarian Republican monarchy of Chonuguk may be about maybe this is all leading towards that. Do you have anything else do you want to say on this topic?
No, and it's interesting. All this parallels the American Revolution in terms of that kind of effort, even from a minority, as happened in the American Revolution, can have significant effect to transform the culture, and that gives us good hope. That it happened before and it can happen again. I
want to go to an article on the Fox News by an opinion piece by Greg Jarrett, Why Robert Mueller Should Resign as Special Counsel. Robert Mueller has a serious conflict of interest that should disqualify him from serving as Special Counsel. He's had a long and close relationship with someone who will surely become a pivotal witness, James Comey.
Yeah.
No one doubts Mueller's sterling credentials. That is not the issue. He is eminently qualified. The problem arises in his duty to fairly and objectively evaluate the evidence he gathers. How can Americans have confidence in the results if they know the special counsel may harbor a conspicuous bias? They cannot. The conflict inevitably discredits whatever conclusion is reached. It renders the entire investigatory exercise suspect, and it only elevates the controversy surrounding it. For this reason, Mueller should not serve special counsel. The law governing the special counsel specifically prohibits him from serving if he has a conflict of interest in the case. The rule has been interpreted to mean that even the appearance of a conflict is sufficient for disqualification.
Yeah.
The conflict of interest is a situation in which an individual has competing or loyalties. The conflict itself creates a clash between that individual's self-interest or bias and his professional or public interest. It calls into question whether he can discharge his responsibilities in a fair, objective, and impartial manner. Identical rules govern prosecutors who, for example, must recuse themselves from handling a case against a person with whom they have worked or had a personal relationship. The same would be true if a prosecutor had a close relationship with a witness in the case. The prior association raises the real or perceived possibility of prejudice or favoritism, which is contrary to the fair administration of justice. So what exactly is Mueller's conflict? He and Comey are good friends and former colleagues who worked hand in hand at the FBI and Department of Justice. Agents will tell you they were joined at the hip. They stood together in solidarity, both threatening to resign over the warrantless wiretapping fiasco involving then Attorney General John Ashcroft in 2004. Comey regards his predecessor as a mentor, while Mueller considers Comey as his protege. And Comey was appointed to succeed Mueller as FBI director. Both men appeared together and were effusive in their praise of one another. Their relationship is not merely a casual one. It is precisely the kind of association which ethical rules are designed to guard against. So, I guess now we have to impeach the impeacher.
Well, it's surprising that he was recommended for the job when the people in Justice, and it was the deputy
Attorney
under
General,
Sessions.
because Sessions recused himself.
Right, he recused himself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's almost when you read about this history between Comey and Mueller, and you wonder how in the world could he ever have been
Yeah.
prompted up as the counsel? It doesn't make any logical sense, and it pass muster with the statute you just recited.
Yeah. But Washington is full of lawyers who get paid to find ways of getting around these kinds of rules and laws, and I'm sure that there are people who are paid to do exactly that in this particular case. But yeah, to the American public, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And it should make sense to not only to Trump supporters but to anti-Trumpers or never-Trumpers as well, because he said there's no way that if he is investigating a situation where James Comey, his friend with whom he's joined at the hip, is involved, the way that anyone can put credibility in whatever result he comes up with. Yeah. Even if he comes out in favor of Trump, that's not going to do Trump all that much good, because the Democrats will simply say, oh, well, he has a conflict of interest, and so then. So anyway, but
it's an amazing contradiction in the Deputy
Attorney General,
that he, on the one hand, wrote this damning recommendation on Comey, and then flips around and hires one of his best friends as the counsel.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Well, that's Washington. That is Washington.
boggles the mind.
Boggles the mind. Washington boggles our mind. That is why we voted for Trump. And that is why we wanted him to stay in office. And that is why we wanted him to beat Trump. Don't be influenced by these New York elitist Democrats. And what are you doing in Saudi Arabia? I'm not sure what that's all about. We'll have to see what comes out of that. But I'm still questioning why he chose Saudi Arabia as his first foreign trip. But anyway, we'll see what happens with that. We'll take a break now and come back in a minute with more news from a Tony Cook perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today. Carr Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 20th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, and I'm sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And Bill Brunhofer is with me. He'll be here in just a minute. And I want to go with this final segment to a Wall Street Journal story about VR headsets that get stuck on shelves. Apparently, they've not so popular anymore. Wall Street Journal says virtual reality was supposed to be the next big thing. But headsets haven't exactly been flying off the shelves. The question is why? There were $1,480,000,000 in VR hardware sales in 2016, according to research. That is far from the $12.65 billion the research firm was forecasting for 2020. That estimate has come down, and there's still reason to question whether VR will get there. In March, digital marketing research firm Thrive Analytics asked the question to Internet users who weren't interested in owning a VR headset. The survey, as summarized by CMarketer, showed many of the expected reasons. The headsets were too expensive, lack of virtual reality content, and poor quality of what was out there, and fear of motion sickness. The biggest chunk, some 53%, said they were just not interested. Perhaps actual reality is difficult enough. Do you own a VR headset?
No,
No, I don't think we do. No, no, I don't. I certainly do not. That is interesting. You know, maybe VR will be kind of the Betamax of the internet world. If anyone remembers what Betamax ever was.
No, I don't recall that one. I must have missed it.
Well, there was VHS. You remember the tapes?
Yeah.
Videotapes. There was VHS, and there was Betamax, and Betamax was be better, but especially anyway. That's look it up. Go to a museum. You'll see it. Yeah, go to a museum, 1980s museum. Yeah, but the last sentence is kind of telling. I think that perhaps actual reality is difficult enough for the people who prefer reality to virtual reality. How would that be?
I don't know. It feels like this whole virtual reality escape is like a new addiction.
Yeah.
And will seize people and take them further and further away from real reality, real relationship, from creation, from people, and further lend itself to creating what we look around and find is a lot of fakeness.
let's go to this article on journalists, what bad people they are. Journalists drink too much, are bad at managing emotions, and operate at a lower level than average, according to a new study. People get paid to study this kind of stuff. Where did we go wrong? Journalists' brains show a lower than average level of executive functioning, according to a new study, which means they have below average ability to regulate their emotions, suppress biases, solve complex problems, switch between tasks, and show creative and flexible thinking. The study, led by Tara Swart, a neuroscientist and leadership coach, analyzed 40 journalists from newspapers, magazines, broadcast, and online platforms over 7 months. The participants took part in tests related to their lifestyle, health, and behavior. It was launched in association with the Club, and the objective was to determine how journalists can thrive under stress. Early subject completed a blood test. Each subject completed a blood test, wore a heart rate monitor for 3 days, kept a food and drink diary for a week, and completed a brain profile questionnaire. The results showed that journalists' brains were operating at a lower level than the average population, particularly because of dehydration and the tendency of journalists to self-medicate with alcohol, caffeine, and high-sugar foods. 41% of the subjects said they drank 18 or more units of alcohol a week, which is 4 units above the recommended weekly allowance. Less than 5% drank the recommended amount of water. However, in interviews conducted in conjunction with the brain profile results, the participants indicated they felt their jobs had a lot of meaning and purpose, and they showed high mental resilience. Swart suggested this gave them an advantage over people in other professions in dealing with the work pressure of tight deadlines. The journalists scored pretty highly on abstraction, the ability to deal with ideas rather than events. It's related to the part of the brain where the most sophisticated problem solving takes place. In other words, it highlights the ability to think outside the box and make connections where others might not see them. And value tagging, the ability to assign values to different sensory cues, such as whether something is a priority or has meaning. Scoring highly in this area indicates a good ability to sift through information and pick out what's important. But they were low on executive function, silencing the mind, which is related to the ability to have thoughts without getting distracted by them, or a powerful ability to focus. Low scores indicate the opposite, suggesting journalists have a hard time preventing themselves from worrying about the future or regretting the past. Compared with bankers, traders, or salespeople, showed that they were more able to cope with pressure. The results, however, showed that the journalists were, on average, no more physically stressed than the average person. The blood tests showed that the levels of cortisol, known as the stress hormone, were mostly normal. Really? Deadlines, can be pretty stressful because every day, especially if you're working in a daily newspaper, you have, like, for example, 6 p.m., for example, sort of as a drop-dead deadline in many cases, and you have to get your story in by then, or it'll just all your work will be for nothing, and someone else's story will get in. But I think what does this say about journalists? How does this give us any clues as to why journalists have turned against Trump in such really in a rabid manner?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get the demographic of the journalists.
It sounds like they tested.
Okay, and then a journalist is a print media journalist.
Well, there's different kind, magazine and television and so forth. Yeah.
So which journalists and how diverse were they? Is another matter too. I don't know, while you're reading it, I'm just thinking how a lot of news reports really come across as superficial, and they're. I mean, there's a habit to put on politically correct facts that have to be put in the article at the end of the article. It's going to read them, that habit, and trying to score political points where it seems like journalists are defined by their political persuasion and their
there are certain
political views.
There are
many of them.
There's some conservative journalists, and I'm sure not everyone journalist profession voted for Trump, voted for Hillary. I mean,
but there's this understanding out there that 80%. You mentioned the other 85 number earlier, but 80-20 or 90-20. It's been surveyed. The political outlooks of journalists tend to be overwhelmingly liberal, Democrat, correct? 80-90%. So you don't know who they included in the survey.
So that doesn't sound like a very large.
Big sample.
A Harvard study has documented that the mainstream media's blatant anti-Trump bias found that while the president dominated news coverage the first 100 days, that coverage was almost entirely negative, with 93% of CNN and NBC's Trump coverage critical of the new president. This was a Harvard Kennedy School's Shorenstein Center released last Thursday, concluded that Trump's coverage has set a new standard for negativity. A new standard for negativity. Yeah. That sounds about right, doesn't it? And I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be broken for some time to come either.
Well, and it also shows how thin-skinned the journalists are. They're used to controlling everything, and when Trump comes out and is unabashedly antagonistic toward toward the media in general and journalists, calling them fake news, then they become even more antagonistic, because that's their preferred mode of operating, and their political persuasion is anti. It'll be even further until we get to the point of derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome, which has been written about lately.
The interesting thing is that the media is focusing so much on Trump that the Democrats have a hard time getting any kind of a media coverage. The kind of media they only get media coverage if they're talking about Trump. So they're trying to talk about their issues, but they can't get that. We covered in a story a day or two about the Democrats having a conference in Washington about how we have to do something other than just oppose Trump. But then even in that conference, they were talking about Trump.
They're their own worst enemy. They're habitual, and they can't control. They're like addicts.
Yes.
And they are unable to control themselves. And they also buy into, in general, the point about the more you repeat this and keep this, if it's getting attention, and it has the potential of putting a chink in the armor, to keep hammering away at it until something breaks.
Bob Woodward, the journalist who became famous for covering the Watergate scandal, said on Friday's MSNBC's Morning Joe that the media is binge drinking the anti-Trump Kool-Aid.
Beautifully put. Yeah.
And he said, stick to the reporting, stick to the reporting. You have done a great job. Of course, one of the realities here is that we've got an old newspaper war going between the New York Times and Washington Post. And that's also part of it, too. They're both trying to out-criticize Trump.
Yeah.
So they're competing with each other.
One up each other
in
criticism.
So, and you notice that if New York Times publishes a story one day, then Washington Post will publish another story the next day, because they're trying to compete against, to see who can lead the charge against Trump. And I think that's what Bob Woodward, who's with the Washington Post, is saying. Some very powerful stories. At the same time, I think it's time to dial back a little bit about because there are people around, certainly not you, certainly not the reporters who are kind of binge drinking the anti-Trump Kool-Aid. Of course, the Post is also doing. He's just saying that because
certainly not the Post was generous,
and that is not going to work in journalism. Let the politicians have that binge drinking, he says. But I'm afraid it's too late. I think the journalists are hooked on this anti-Trump Kool-Aid. And I think they're going to just take it all the way wherever it leads.
Absolutely. Yep. That's exactly where we're headed, unless something else can to turn this. But the sides are lined up, and it seems like the only thing missing is the barricades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, there has been a civil war going on at least since last year, and I think and I expect that it is likely to get worse because the journalists are not going to. New York Times, Washington Post, other journalists, MSNBC, and the CNN and other mainstream media are not going to let up. If anything, they're going to keep on going with this anti-Trump madness. But I think the American people are going to react against it, and we're going to see in the, I expect we'll see in the midterm elections next year, that the Democrats will lose again, and they say, why? No, it was the Russians. No, this time it was the Chinese. No, this time it was the Malaysians, it was the Indonesians, the Indians, anybody but themselves.
yeah.
But let me in here on a light note, something fishy happened this week at the Stanford Avenue Elementary School in Orville. A typical Tuesday took a turn for the weird just before noon when the campus was suddenly covered in dead fish. They were everywhere, all over the playground, in drinking, and as one custodian discovered, even on the roof. School officials aren't sure if it was some kind of prank or if it really rained fish. I kind of suspect, this is graduation. Do you remember, did you guys do senior pranks?
There were some around, yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds like it could be one.
Yeah, it sounds to me, yeah, this is May, right? Yeah, I would suspect the senior class of that school is what I would, elementary school though, maybe not elementary school, maybe look at the nearby senior high school. That's my recommendation to the people who are investigating that incident. But we have to come to an end now for our King's Report for this Saturday, May 20th. We wish good luck to the people investigating the dead fish all over that elementary school in California. And we'll be back on Monday. The King will be back on Monday, but you can also catch him tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. For the Sunday service. You can tune the live broadcast of that on this same channel, the Sanctuary Church in Newfoundland, PA YouTube channel. And so have a good weekend, and God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.